Hey, everybody, welcome to the 8th episode of Taps and Patience, where Harrison and I talk about our businesses, and I guess theoretically we could talk about life, but we don't do that very much, but we could. I have already said Harrison, which is my co-host from Precision Ingenuity, and I am AJ from Design the Everything. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm tired because we had the festival this weekend, and so
Oh,
it
yeah,
was a
how'd that go?
long weekend.
Yep. How'd it go?
Good. We missed out on Saturday, on the big chunk of Saturday. And if it wasn't for that, I bet we would have cleared over $1,000 pretty easily.
Okay.
For the
In
weekend.
how many days?
3.
Okay, that's not bad.
So, it's not bad. We definitely can do better. It was the first time that we brought a bunch of tumblers.
Okay.
And so we bought a bunch of tumblers to engrave there in front of people. And it was a big attention draw, but we definitely need to get more fluid at doing that, especially live in front of people. It's a little bit stressful.
Yeah.
But it's a ton of fun, and it's a huge attention draw. And one thing I found out was that there was a lot of people that thought it was a 3D printer, and they were super interested if it was a 3D printer. And so I'm tempted to bring the laser and a printer. The problem with the printer is that it just runs for hours on end. And so I need something small that can run in like 30 minutes or less that I can print out and people can kind of see it from start to finish, because just sitting it run there and get like one part off in a day, it's not nearly as exciting as the other. So
you could do some sort of fairly flat like coin or name tag or something and just have it and put a bigger nozzle on maybe.
Yeah.
And just have it crank them out.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that, because I know there's a lot of people that were interested if it was a 3D printer, which we do 3D printing. We have two, but I'll have to think about that and see if there's a way we can capitalize on that, because there was a lot of attention thinking it was a 3D printer. So
that's interesting.
But other than that, it was great. Met a lot of people, got some good business connections, and it was pretty fun because it's one of those things where I'm not really there to sell that much as I am there to make connections. And on that front, I think we were very successful.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's where the really the long-term value is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was one guy that he moved here from Montana or somewhere. Forget where he moved from. It might not have been Montana. But anyways, he does candles, and him and his wife have a candle making business. They moved to our town, and they were looking for someone to make candle molds. So we might start making some candle molds for them, machining them out, and then that'll give them the master. And then they were going to duplicate it out and then make the candles. So make a master candle, and then they would make a mold of that master candle, and then use that mold to make the candles.
Yep.
So
it's kind of like the company I do some work for, where I design a mold for. I design a mold that gets machined out of aluminum that they pour silicon into, that then they can pour chocolate or whatever food item into it to make their chocolates. But I designed that master mold, which then they'll pour silicon into them 50 or 100 or 200 times and have 200 molds out of that.
Yeah, that's basically the same idea that we were talking about, which would be really fun. We'll see how it goes, but it'd be kind of cool to do that.
Yep.
So what about you? What's going on with you?
So I started this project a while back where I was working on a all metal tape measure. And this here is the first fully functional prototype out of aluminum. I started working in earnest on this project about a week and a half ago, with 3D printing. And I 3D printed probably a dozen different prototypes, just slowly revising the design. And then Saturday, I think maybe Friday, I started actually trying to machine them. And machining them is a little bit of a bear, partially because I don't have much room in my stock that I'm using. Like I have, I think, 50 thou or less in terms of height to machine these. And so there's just not very much room there for work holding.
What's your order of operations on that?
So right now, and this is going to need to change, but right now, and this is in two halves here. I have some pieces of material that are 6 inches long, 3 inches wide, and a ½ inch thick, which is perfect for getting two of these halves out. They kind of sit in the material right there like this. Right now, I start by sandblasting one side of them, and then I use adhesive work holding in the mill. I super glue them down to I keep calling it a super glue arbor. That's not really the right term. That's just what ClickSpring calls them. But like a super glue fixture, kind of looks like a vacuum fixture, but just for super glue. Then I bore a couple holes in them and add a couple not set screws, a couple socket head cap screws for security. And then I face them off and go through the rest of the machining. And then I have two of them that are in a blank side by side next to each other with just a little hat on the bottom. The hat's like 50 thou thick or something like that. And then I flip them together without separating them into a dual station vise and machine the top surface of them.
Okay. That's cool.
But I scrapped probably 4 sets of parts trying to get that to work. The first thing I was running into is that my big 6 inch long piece of material, when I removed the top 3/4 of that, it would warp the material. And so it would peel itself off of my super glue arbor. And that's why I started putting in the extra bolts. In the future, I think I would just put these on a fixture with Mighty Bite clamps and not look back. But I really just needed to get a couple prototypes done, so I stuck with what I was doing just to get them done. And let's see, I scrapped a couple of parts that way. I broke a couple tools through stupid cam mistakes, all the normal things. And then on the flip, I did one, and it's not this one here. Oh, this one does show some. I was not careful with how tightly I was clamping down. And since these things are, hollow, kind of cup shaped, when I clamped too tight, it bowed them up. And besides getting just kind of ugly, bad, weird finishes, it also made the walls too thin, and the end mill went all the way through in one case. And
yep,
yeah,
been there, done that.
So
the aluminum playing card cases that we do. The top lid is about an 1/8 inch thick at its thickest and about a 1/16 inch thick for the majority of it.
Yeah.
So it's very prone to that as well.
And you're holding those with Uniforce clamps, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And order of operations is extremely important for those. So I do the facing operation first, the top side, the outside, because at that point my material is the thickest, and I get the cleanest face with the face mill because it's hitting that whole face, and if it's not solid, it'll vibrate, and you can never get a good finish with it. And so I have to do that one first. And then when I flip it, then I can go in with a smaller end mill and remove all that material, and my forces are much lower with a small end mill than they are with a big face mill. And so I can remove all that material away without it popping out of the work holding.
Okay. One thing I did do with these that I haven't actually tested yet is I 3D printed a little puck that fits in here. And so when I flip it, I can put that puck in and then do the machining. And I'm hoping that gives it some stability.
Yeah. And the other thing that kind of comes to mind is, could you machine a puck for them to sit on and then pocket out that puck all the way through? That way you could get your adhesive from the back side onto them. So you would stick your part with the pucks on them upside down onto a surface where you can, a known flat surface, press it down into it and fill the back sides up with your resin cure. And then you'd have something that would be super rigid. Or if you
Yeah.
have any screw holes on the inside, you could kind of do the knife maker's method where you could do a puck and then bolt to it from the bottom side. And that would be another strong way of doing that.
One of the design features on these, though, is there are no fasteners. There's no external fasteners at all.
Mighty Bite ID expansion clamps comes to mind, but I don't know because you have to do those in the center, I think, to tighten them.
Yes, that's true. Oh, also, fun fact: if you are using those mod vices with a part that has a big hat on top, you can't access the screws to tighten the mod vice. So I have to trim the hat with my bandsaw just to make sure I can get to the screws, which probably helps a little bit from a process reliability point anyway, because you're removing less of that top hat.
So backing up just a little bit, you said there's no fasteners at all. What holds them together?
So there are 3 dowel pins in a triangle around the outside of the part, and they will get red Loctited and then held together while that cures.
Okay, so you could use those pins as locating pins in a feature, couldn't you? And then here's a thought. If you drilled a hole, you wouldn't even need the puck at that point, I don't think, unless you need that puck for a face mill, if you're worried about that surface being wavy. But if you had the dowel pins in your fixture and you set them onto those dowel pins and you didn't have that full puck, but you just had a shelf that extended past a little bit, you could fill the area behind it with epoxy resin. So that's another thought.
Yeah. When I was thinking about production, I think I will probably just create a negative of this inside a pallet and use one of those machinable Uniforce clamps to hold them in place for Op2. And since there will be a puck as part of the pallet, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue.
Nah. I was just trying to get you to use your new fancy.
Yes. Now, okay, I will say I did this with the puck. I skipped by this earlier. So instead of 3D printing like a solid puck, I 3D printed just a bottom layer and a perimeter, and I filled the rest with UV resin. So,
okay.
So it's 2 inches in diameter and a 1/4 inch tall, but it took it 20 minutes to print, and then 5 minutes to fill with UV resin. So that's actually kind of a cool, neat trick.
That's interesting. So, have you ordered all of your stuff from Send Cut Send for your Kickstarter?
It was just delivered an hour ago, or I noticed it an hour ago. So it's sitting inside in the boxes. I haven't even opened them yet.
Sorry, I just thinking about that because you've been doing all of this for a week, and now it's about time to move over to production on those.
Yep. Though I need to finish these for the prototype of the month my Patreon backers first. So there's a little bit of delay in that, but I'm hoping to get at least.
Sorry about that.
I'm hoping to get at least most of them machined tomorrow, and then there'll be like a day of tumbling and a day of assembly or whatever. But it would be nice to be able to get the machine cleared off tomorrow so that I can start doing the carabiner production.
Okay. Now, were you able to incorporate any? Because you were talking about doing these potentially for the Make 100, right?
Yes.
So, have you been able to come up with any design features that you want to put into that would be unique?
Yes. Have we not talked about this yet?
Well, we talked about it some, but I don't know if now that you've got an actual machined part in your hand, I don't know if it's actually doable. Some of the ideas we talked about.
So I would say, first of all, these are designed to be a white label product, something that I can sell to people, and then with probably some amount of customization, and then they can resell. And I have a verbal commitment for 50 of them already, plus the about 15 that are going out to my Patreon backers. So I have a pretty good number of these, so I can start to justify pallets and stuff. Those versions will have a custom engraving for that person. the Kickstarter ones, I think I'm going to do some generative art engraving on them. And generative art is basically artwork that is I'm trying to avoid using the word generative. It is artwork that is created by a computer following an algorithm with a large amount of randomness.
There you
And
go.
the cool thing about that is you can just hit, recalculate and end up with completely different artwork. And so
Minecraft for art.
Exactly. Yeah. You're just creating a new world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal for Make 100 is to have 100 different tape measures that are all randomized and completely different.
Nice.
In my notebook, I kind of have a block diagram of what needs to happen in order to get to generate that art in Fusion, because I'm gonna try to do it all in Fusion, but I haven't started working on getting that to a Fusion plugin at all, and that's the next step. Though,
fair enough.
There is an alternative method here, which is probably the smarter route to go down. It's just slightly less cool, which is I buy a laser and I just machine the tape measures and then I laser the design in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much easier to generate that art in an SVG than it is in Fusion.
Yeah.
So that's
I was just going to suggest that. I was like, for what you're doing, like what I was thinking was something that was going to be more like that kind of that skeletonized look we talked about, but I wasn't sure if you're going to be able to do that. But yeah, if you're just adding a unique picture to each one, I would suggest a laser. It is so much faster and much less headache and much less stressful than setting it up in your machine and letting your machine run for 30 minutes to an hour doing small, tiny engraving.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is with the 10K spindle, engravers, you're running at 10,000 or 1/10 feed per tooth.
Yeah. And so coming from someone who did a Kickstarter with a lot of engraving on those aluminum playing card cases, I had some that literally, and I think I ran my spindle so much that ever since I did all that engraving, I think my spindle it's just a lot louder.
Oh, really?
Okay. Because I literally ran it at 10,000 RPMs for like a day or two straight, just doing engraving, and it got so hot that I think some of the bearings, there's not any run out difference or anything, but it just sounds louder when you run it. Like it used to be a lot quieter, and it's just much louder than it used to be. And I think it's just because it ran those engraving speeds for literally days on end at 10,000 RPM.
Yeah. You didn't do those with a diamond engraver?
I did them with I tried to use a diamond engraver but what I ended up doing was I got a 30-degree ball end mill with a 1/64 inch ball, and that took a bigger bite than a pointed engraver, and I could get a wider path for without going super deep. And so that allowed me to, especially on single point line engraved outline stuff, it was very critical for that, because especially on those lids, because they were so thin, that if I went too deep, then it just looked weird. And so going with a ball end mill that was a little bit wider, I could do thicker lines basically without any issue. But it still took, I think it was a 3-flute, 30-degree 1/64 ball end mill from Harvey, and it was still really slow. So
laser.
yeah. I mean, I could laser one of those things into my anodized parts in under 5 minutes, easy. versus like 30 minutes to an hour to sometimes on the more complicated ones. I think my longest one was almost 2 hours on one engrave.
Okay. Yeah, it's like one of my branding irons. That's how those were. How deep does your laser engrave? Like, if I wanted this to be a notable, like, physical,
how deep do you want to go? We were at the show. We were trying to figure out something we could do that made a lot of noise that would drive people's attention, and so we started cutting out shapes out of razor blades because we got a bunch of razor blades that we were engraving Damascus patterns into. But for kicks and giggles, we're like, well, how powerful is this laser? And about 100 to 150 passes, we could cut all the way through the thickness of a razor blade, and that took about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And that was in steel. In aluminum, it goes much faster.
So with a reasonable amount of effort, you could get a pattern in here that you could actually feel. Like, it's not just a black mark. Yeah.
Oh, easy. Super easy. One of the things that we had there as an example was we did 100 passes on a knife slide, and it was really deep to the touch.
Okay.
I think it was like a 32nd or a 64th deep. It was substantial for what it was. And put it in perspective, a guy who has a laser that is probably about half as powerful as mine. Now, he had to run it a lot longer than mine, but he let it run overnight, and he cut all the way through his slide from one side to the other.
Okay.
So he had all these holes in his slide where he's like, yeah, I set it on repeat and I forgot about it and I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and he's like, I'll probably never do it again, but he said it went all the way through. So, I mean, if you want to wait enough time, you can go through pretty much anything with it. It's just how much time do you want to dedicate to it. And the stronger the laser you have, obviously, the faster it goes.
The faster that is. Yeah.
So like
10 to 15 thou, or maybe 15 to 20 thou is what I think I would aim for. Though I'd have to like actually feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. That in aluminum would probably be in the 50-ish pass range, which depending on your pattern and your size. What's an example of something that we did?
Yeah, the tape measures are about 2 inches in diameter.
Okay. So we were doing 2-inch square pieces, 2-inch square pattern. And we could do that pretty quick. I'm trying to remember my exact numbers for what I did on that. I remember the little drawings we were doing out of steel. They were probably about a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, and we could cut one of those out in under 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, that's totally reasonable.
And that was 150 passes.
Okay.
So to put that in perspective.
What power is your laser? What wattage?
80. It's an 80 watt.
Okay. So that's a relatively big one.
Yeah. It's got some oomph to it. And focus is a big thing with that. When we were first using it, it was out of focus. And so it took a lot more power to do different things. And then we started playing around with the focus and got it actually focused. And then that thing would cut like crazy. Now, one thing you can do is if you're doing something smaller, you can get a tighter lens, which does a couple of things for you. The tighter lens gives you a higher resolution at a smaller size, and it gives you more power in the same amount of area. So like an 80 watt with a 300 millimeter lens versus a 30 watt with a 110 millimeter lens or smaller probably would cut about the same in the same amount of area. They'd probably have about the same amount of power per given space or square area. So.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, man, I've been trying to avoid buying one of those lasers, but I think it's in my very near future.
Well, hey, if you want to experiment with it, maybe I can send you some sample pieces, or if you want me to do some laser engraving on some of your stuff, we can maybe ship some stuff back and forth to get some practice in, or kind of give you an idea what you're looking at.
Yep, I'm game for that.
So we got scrap material. So if you want us to just try to do something, we can send it, or if you want to put it on on a tape measure. We can do that too.
Okay. I'll take you up on that.
So.
This is just show and tell time. Did you see this?
Oh, that's so cool. Is that the one for, yes. I watched his video on those. You got one?
Yeah. So for those of you who are just listening to audio, this is a video podcast, by the way, if you didn't know. Winston Moy sent me a ISO grid coaster.
That you
I just dropped
broke?
my tape measure. It popped. No, this is my tape measure. Don't worry. It just popped open and unrolled itself. Because that one wasn't glued. It was just dowel pins. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Winston Moy sent me a ISO grid tape measure. An ISO grid. I should make an ISO grid tape measure. Winston cool. Moy sent me a ISO grid coaster. An ISO grid is just a way of removing a bunch of material from a given piece of stock while leaving most of its strength there. And it also looks really nice. And he just knocked it out of the park. There's a video on these. I traded him a pry bar for him. And
that's sweet.
They're just fantastic. This was done on a Nomad. Gorgeous. It looks so good. And
that is just gorgeous. I'm super jealous right now. Winston, if you listen to this, let me know what I got to do to get one.
Send him a pry bar, apparently.
So what you're saying is I need to borrow your pry bar design machine and just send one to him.
Last time we talked, did we talk about breaking the slitting saw?
No, but I did see some of your Facebook posts, or not Facebook, Instagram posts on that.
Yeah, so I broke my slitting saw. It was kind of a combination of things that all combined together into breaking it.
Because I remember seeing like one post where it's like my little worker worked all night, and then a couple of days later it was like, oh, slitting saw's broke.
Yeah. So it worked pretty well. It actually worked very, very well. The problem is in stainless steel, I had to run it really slow. And the Tormach does not like running really slow. It does not have torque under like 500 RPM. And I was running these things at I think about 350 RPM.
Ooh.
Yeah. Machine really not happy. So I was taking small, gentle passes. However, I somehow screwed up my work coordinate system when I put in this new piece of material. And it wasn't hugely off. It was off by like, I don't know, 20 thou or something. But that was enough that the first pass was really heavy and overloaded. And It stalled out the spindle, and I was able to just stop the machine. I happened to be standing right there because it was the first one. So I stopped the machine, and I retracted the slitting saw away from the part. I slid it out of the slot. That was fine. Mm-hmm. However, I'm running this machine off of a little wireless keyboard, which has its advantages and has its weaknesses. One of the main weaknesses is that to move the spindle up, to go Z positive, you have to hold the function button while pressing the forwards arrow.
Mm-hmm.
If you hold the shift button and press the forwards arrow, it rapids straight into your part.
Ooh.
So
I have your solution.
It's called
No, you can keep your keyboard. It's called the little Tormach wheel that has the buttons and I got that, and I have never used the keyboard. Honestly, to move my Tormach, I've never used it. I love that little wheel. It is so much easier. You can kind of control the speed just by twisting the knob. And then it's got the little thing in the center that you can spin to just dial it in. It is amazing. Now, I have crashed stuff with it. So that does happen.
Yeah.
And you got to be careful about getting water in it, because I did get a little bit of water on it. And every once in a while, it doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while, it'll start randomly like moving the bed, but it's moving it at like tenths, like really slow, but it's just like drifting, and you can't tell it's moving. Like the only reason I ever figured out that it was doing that was because I would try to start a program or go to a different page, and it would be like, cannot do it while
jogging.
Things in motion. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not moving it. So
yeah. I have used those before. What happened to that? I guess I probably sent it off with my old Tormach. I had one with my PCNC Tormach. Oh, maybe it died on me. I think that's what it was. Probably because it got coolant in it. And I just never bought a new one. I've ran machines for years just off of the keyboard because I've always had things running Linux CNC or whatever. Though the Tormach at work at my day job, which I'm basically done with now, by the way, on a side note, it has the operator's console and a real MPG, and it is so nice. Yeah. I really wish I had that on this machine.
Yeah. How is the console on that? I wondered if that was a worthy upgrade.
It's expensive, but also it is really nice. So I don't think the payback period for it is like a year. But in 5 years, like in terms of broken tools and scrap parts, like having the physical knobs and like it's just so much easier to prove out programs. It's probably worth it if you're for a 5-year investment.
Yeah. I have the Haas and I have the little wheel on the Haas control, and I like that a lot. That's probably my favorite. Like I thought I would hate it compared to the Pendant. I'm like, oh, because I have to go push the button over here, and with the Pendant I can do it all like this. But it's like, no, it's just so much easier to control it with that bigger wheel on there, and it's just so much nicer quality than that little USB thing. That I like it a lot better.
The nicest thing on the operator console is the 3 physical knobs on it. One for the machine max speed, one for spindle speed, and then one for feed rate. Yeah. Because then when you're proving out a program, you can, assume the machinist stance with your hand on the max feed button and
the John Grimsmo stance.
Yeah. Which I still kind of do with the keyboard, but you have to click and hold on the slider so that you can just slide to the right if you need to.
Yeah. But, and it's not nearly as precise. I feel if I just move my arm a little bit or like twitch in the wrong way, I'm gonna wrap it in instead of feed hold or slow down. So, and my biggest fear is that when I try to feed hold, I accidentally move it and turn the coolant off instead. So not only do I not feed hold, but I turn my coolant off and destroy a tool at the same time. So,
do you know, is there a keyboard shortcut for feed hold? Oh, it's space. Never mind. It's space, right?
Oh, it is? I've never feed.
It is space.
I've always just clicked. I didn't know you could do it with the keyboard.
Yeah, honestly. It's space.
That's cool.
I should dig into those keyboard shortcuts before because they're different than the Linux CNC ones. Because on Linux CNC, there were also keyboard shortcuts for going between continuous jogging mode and incremental mode. And then also you could hit plus and minus and it would change the size of the step.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've missed that on my Tormach. I don't think it works. I don't know. Maybe it does and I just haven't tested it, but.
Do you have a touch screen on your Tormach, or do you have a normal screen?
On this one, I do not. This one, I just have a big monitor.
Okay. Did you have the touch before? Have you ever had the touch on the Tormach?
I have it on the operator console at the machine that was in my day job.
Did you use the touch a lot? Did you like it that way?
Yes, almost exclusively.
Okay. Because I don't have touch on mine, and I've wondered if it would be worth upgrading to that. Not.
I would say if it's in a convenient location, then yes. I would have to move. Oh, you can see there's my monitor right there. And it's 90 degrees off from when you're standing in the machine. You'd have to stand it and be poking into
Do you not have it on? Do you not like having it on that arm that Tormach comes with?
I did not buy the arm. The arm is $700.
Oh yeah, it is an optional extra, isn't it? We got the arm. So
okay.
I love it. I don't think I would. I like it because I can move it in and out of the way. I can move it right in there close, or I can move it around the corner. It's really nice for whenever I'm changing out the filter on the back now that I got that filter, which I've gone through 2 or 3 of them now. It catches a lot of chips. But it's really nice whenever I'm checking for a leak because I can rotate that whole console around to basically almost the back of the machine on that arm. And then I can start and stop the coolant and watch it, make sure it doesn't leak.
I think the difference is, do you have a wireless keyboard?
No, I don't have a wireless keyboard.
So I can carry this around with me.
Okay.
And so there's pros and cons to a wireless keyboard because the batteries do die in here. And I've never had them die in an inopportune time. Like, it gives you a warning light. But I could see a situation where something bad happens when your batteries die and you need to e-stop or something. The biggest pro to this is I can carry it around with me. And so, like, if I'm way over there, like, I don't know, getting parts out of the tumbler, I'll take the keyboard with me. So if I hear a bad sound, I can mash escape and stop it.
Okay. That's cool. I hadn't thought about that.
So
I might have to get one of those. We got the waterproof keyboard from Tormach.
Those are the worst. That's what we have a day job. It's awful. I don't know if you have the same thoughts and feelings, but
I don't, but that's because I don't use it very much except for I guess it is horrible. Like, the few times I've tried to type on it, I hate it.
Yes.
But the very little amount I use it, because I use that pendant for pretty much everything, and then I use a mouse to navigate everything else. Like, I almost never use the keyboard ever because I'm using the mouse or I'm using the jog pendant. So I don't really touch the keyboard except for if I'm searching for a command.
Yeah.
It's about the only time I use it. And I hate it then.
Yes. I would encourage everybody to never buy that thing.
It is nice. And the only sense it's nice is whenever I'm dripping in water because I've just reached in there, and then I don't worry about touching the keyboard. But yeah, it's probably not worth it. So
I used to use this on my lathe back when I was running a lathe with Linux CNC. And for those, I'm forgetting I'm on an audio podcast. This is a small handheld keyboard, kind of like the size of those old phones that used to slide up. But it has a mouse pad on it, so you can move your mouse. It has the clicking buttons. It has everything else you would need, and it'll fit just like in your pocket or in your palm of your hand. So this would be a good supplement to, like, if you had a fixed keyboard. It has the arrows. So I don't know. These are $20.
I went through a bunch of those whenever I was big into like Raspberry Pi. I used those all for the Raspberry Pi computers. So, and that one had orange, so perfect fit.
Yes. Part of me wants to make or have somebody make for me a little custom mechanical keyboard that just has, like, forwards, backwards, page up, page down, just like all the keyboard shortcuts.
There was some devices that I was looking at back when I was at my old job that it was a macro station, but there was an LCD screen under every button, and it was like a 4x5 row of programmable buttons where you could put your images behind it so you could tell what each button did.
Yeah, that's cool.
Super expensive and cool, but
yeah,
but it was super cool.
There's a guy, I think P3D Creations. There's two people that I mix up. There's like P3D Creations and like PDX Machining, or I don't know. It's one of these people, but they have one of those, and it runs basically their entire shop through like IoT. They can turn off their light, or turn on and off their lights. They can turn on and off their air compressor. Just everything.
I think I remember listening to one of their podcasts, and he said he had like a red alert mode or something where he could like turn off all the lights and turn on these red flashing lights and a horn or something, or a siren.
Yeah.
I would love to get to that level of automation.
You could do a mechanical keyboard where you have FIND like all in a row, so that when you need to search for something, you can just be like, find.
There you go.
And you can have like basically a number pad with like the G next to it. So you can be like G54, G55. Okay. Someone needs to make this now. I'll sell you the idea for free.
I did see a video of a guy that did AI generated keyboard layouts based off of the English language. Huh. And the idea was for you to type any page out of a random selection of books, how far was the distance that your fingers would have to move. And it was very interesting how it generated all these different layouts and how much more efficient they were than the QWERTY layout. So it was pretty interesting.
Well, the QWERTY layout was designed to slow down typing on typewriters to keep the little, whatever it's called, the little arms that swing in the typewriter from hitting each other.
I didn't hear, I don't think if it was to go slower or if it was to separate them out.
It was to get them farther apart.
Yeah, it was to get them farther apart, but I don't think speed was the issue. I think it was they wanted to have common letters be apart from each other. That way they would come in from different angles. But yeah, just whatever the reason, they were designed with typewriters in mind. That's the point.
Though switching to a new keyboard would be murder. Like I can't imagine, and this is why we will have QWERTY forever.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's like the save button. Like we were never going to use floppy disks ever again, but that's the save button now.
I used floppy disks regularly at my day job.
Oh, really?
Yes. We had two pieces of equipment where the only way to get code to them was floppy disk.
Okay. Well, let me back up. In modern America, for 99.9% of young people that are born today will never know what a floppy disk is.
Yes.
Other than the save button.
Yeah. At my day job, the very first piece of equipment or the very first piece of NC equipment, not CNC, but NC equipment that shop had was an old turret punch. And it originally ran on a reel-to-reel like tape drive. And then it got converted to a floppy disk. And
so it went real high tech.
Yeah. And then it stayed that way for, the next 40, 50 years. But that turret punch runs the same 3 programs and it has run those forever.
Yeah. I joke that, that's real high tech, but honestly, that would be really cool and interesting to kind of see the process of converting that.
Yep.
So, like, I've always found it fascinating how, like, the old punch computers where the programming was done on a piece of paper with all the punch holes in them. Fascinating what we were able to do with that back in the day compared to where we are today.
Yep. I have to program that machine, or I did have to. I've passed it on now. I had to program that machine on a computer that was running Mac OS 7 because that was the software.
That's cool.
So
it's just fascinating, like legacy stuff that people have to hang on to. Some of my relatives have a cabinet business, and they had a panel saw machine that they've been using for years, and it ran on Windows 95.
Okay.
And it went down, I guess, a year or two ago, and they wanted to. They had to go buy a computer off of eBay with Windows 95, and then they had to try to transplant the software, and they couldn't get it to work. And they'd never used CNC in that shop. They had this big panel saw, and they just didn't see a need for CNC. And they couldn't get it to work. They thought about retrofitting it, but they decided to try CNC. And they've had that machine not quite a year, and they've already got a second on order because it has just blown their production up.
Yes.
Like they're way outproducing what they ever were before.
Yep.
So
yeah, CNC does that.
Yeah, no, it was funny like listening to him talk because I've been there a couple times, but I've never really thought about it. I've asked them about it a couple times, and they just said it was never worth it. But I think their mind has changed on that.
Yep. So let's see. Update on discussion topic last week, which was time management, or at least largely time management. I'm going to move not my microphone. Was this? This is a camera for people who are watching video. So I made a bunch of to-do list boards. Basically, nice. I made I used my CO2 laser cutter to make signs, and they say one's current Kickstarter, one's next Kickstarter. Then there's one for order. I said order. I meant to write purchasing, but I wrote the wrong word. Then there's one for shop projects, prototype of the month, and sticker of the month.
How you liking your laser?
I love it. It when I first got it, I was like, this seems a little weak. Like I'm underwhelmed by the 100 watts. But then I went through the the alignment and the focusing procedures one more time, and it's like, okay, now I get it. This is nice.
Nice. Yeah, that's that's cool. I've the lasers they're going to become more commonplace. I think just with how useful they are.
Yep.
Everyone's that has a machine shop is probably going to end up with them at some point.
Yep. I found a new YouTube channel that I've watched a few videos. They've been around a long time. I think the channel is called Jenny and Davis, or at least that's the name of the people.
That's the one that I was trying to. I think I told you about.
Oh, did you? Oh,
Yeah.
that's why I watched it, because you told me.
I could have sworn I told you about that.
Yeah, you
one.
did. That's why I watched it. And yeah, they have some woodworking equipment, but then they have like 2 glow forged lasers.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they seem to have at least 2 employees plus
Two or
the
three or more now. They're getting
yeah.
they're probably at least I think 4 now.
Yeah, and they have maybe, I don't know how much a Glowforge is, but besides the Glowforge, they have maybe $10,000 worth of equipment at most, plus the 2 Glowforges, which I think together are another 10,000. So, $20,000 of investment, and they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, they're doing really well. They're really good at their video making though.
They are.
So, and they have both of them working on it pretty much full time, and they are hitting sales hard, which is awesome. And that's something that I wish I could do better with sales. Um,
That is
it's
something
it
that I suck at. Yeah.
like I if I had someone who could do a good job of selling the business to people and could make those connections, I feel like we'd be doing really, really well. Because once I make some good connections, um, I do a pretty good job of keeping them. It's just hard
Mm-hmm.
finding them. Like
Yes.
for example, I had these people that found me online, um, and they wanted some go no go gauges for foam made,
Okay.
and so we ended up making them, and I had a couple extra, and some of them were wrong, and one of the wrong ones got mixed up whenever I shipped it out. And so they messaged me. They're like, "Hey, we got the order, but one of them's messed up," and yada yada yada. And I was like, "Oh crap!" And so
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, don't worry about it. Don't send the old one back." I said, "We'll send you a new one. Just we'll take care of you, whatever." And I guess they were just really not used to that, because I got there was a bunch of people on the chain, and I got all these responses back like, "Wait, really? That's awesome. We're going to use you from now on." And so I was
Yeah.
able to turn a bad situation into a good situation, but it was stressful for a little bit. But there's a lot of businesses out there that I don't know how they stay in business, because when they make a mistake, they never own up to it.
Yeah.
And so if you're good to people, your reputation, even when you make mistakes, is just that was an example of something I'm like, oh, these people are never going to contact me again. I need more customers, and I just messed up this one. And so I was like, we'll do whatever we can to fix it. And they were just overjoyed, over the moon. So, um, stuff like that.
Yeah. It's amazing how even a standard level of customer service can set you apart sometimes. Like
Yeah.
it, I don't know. I don't know how some of these companies run where, I've had this at my day job, trying to buy metal. I am trying to order 30,000 pounds of aluminum, but you are not answering my emails.
Yeah.
This is a large order, at least for us. I suppose maybe for them it's not, but all you have to do is answer your email.
Yeah. Well, we had at my old job, we had a product line that we had that was not really anyone's priority.
Mm-hmm.
And this poor salesman, he had been at this other company for 20 years, and he had talked to 10 or more people at our company, or at that company at the time, who had been in charge of that product line, and none of them knew anything about it compared to him. And
Yep.
the pricing was just every time it was a different person, the pricing was just all over the place, and there was no structure and no nothing. And like when he got to me, he was so like I answered the phone and he took my head off before I could get a word in edgewise, and so I had to talk him down. But man, it was rough.
Yep.
But I mean, it's just stuff like that that people have to deal with on a regular basis. That if you're just nice and understanding, it gets you so far because it's so uncommon.
Yep.
Which I just don't understand. I don't understand how businesses can function like that and get as big as they get. Like it just, I don't understand it.
Well, I don't think they started that way. I think there's a natural life cycle to all businesses, and you start high energy, high effort, and then you get complacent.
And you get employees that don't have the same ethic as the guy who started it, who built that reputation in the first place.
And you don't.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
If you don't build the
company culture,
culture. Thank you. Yeah. Yep.
That's true. Business culture is such a big topic in its own. And if you breed an environment of discontent and infighting, I mean, it's just going to leach out of the company to everyone else that deals with it.
Yep. I learned that lesson when I was working at Chick-fil-A, like in college, because we had a fairly large staff. Like you don't think of a Chick-fil-A as a relatively large business, but that store employed it. We had on our rosters about 120 employees. Yeah. And now granted, not all of those were actively working, and a lot of them were, or almost all of them were part-time and would only work, a couple hours a week. But like that Chick-fil-A was a fairly large business. When I left it, they were doing upwards of 10 million a year. And I was talking to one of my old coworkers the other day, and they're now around $60 million a year.
Yeah.
So like people underestimate how large of an operation these can be. But anyway, because it's fast food, even though Chick-fil-A has some of the best retention numbers, you're still talking like rotating through almost all of your employees in 6 months or a year. Yep. And it was, if you did not stay on top of culture, there were very obvious effects. And it was very obvious, like the turnaround time on the culture was so short as compared to a longer company. Like there was not a lot of the frog boiling in pot or whatever that analogy is. Things could change relatively quickly as people went in and out. And if you did not stay on top of it, it would turn into any other fast food restaurant. Whereas, oh no. All right, your turn to talk.
It would turn into any other culture pretty fast. And I guess in that sense, it was probably a blessing for those companies to be able to do that in that type of environment, because it gives you the opportunity to try things. And if it goes bad because your staff turnaround is so short, you can try things and learn how to create a good culture really fast. So honestly, as someone who is trying to start a business, it'd probably be pretty cool to go work at a place like that if you had the time to kind of learn how management handles that kind of stuff, to try to set your own business up to create a good culture. Because I'm sure they put a lot of R&D to creating a solid culture to be able to withstand that kind of turnover rate. And that's one thing that I had a hard time with at my old business at the old place I was at, was because there was a couple people there that had the mentality of, we need a high turnover rate because we're not pushing our people hard enough if we don't have a high enough turnover rate. Because they look at these other businesses that are multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar businesses, and they're like, their turnover rate is, so high, if we're, they're pushing their people so hard, so we need to do the same. And it's like, they can do that because of how big they are. We're not that. We're sub 100 or sub 200 people. We can't push our guys that hard because, one, we're not doing fast food, and we're not doing put product A in box A, put product B in box B, and ship it. Like, you're having people that are like skilled welders, fabricators, machinists, people operating heavy, expensive equipment. You don't want to, and there's a lot of cultural knowledge or a lot of not cultural knowledge, but
institutional knowledge.
Yeah, institutional knowledge in a lot of these guys, and if you're cycling through them so fast, you're not going to retain that.
Yep.
So,
though, let's see. I agree that at least some. I don't want to say turnover is good, but getting new blood in is good.
Yes.
The flip side, you don't want to scare people off because your work environment's terrible, but you also still want to be able to have new ideas come in, because that was the problem that my last day job had. The average retention there was like 20 years. The shop foreman had been there for like 40 years.
Yeah. And it's true. You don't want to have your culture get so old that they just don't know how to embrace anything new.
Yep.
Because that can definitely happen to companies, and that's how some companies lose their edge, is because they don't have enough fresh blood coming in.
Yep.
So that's a good point. That's definitely a balancing act between retaining people and getting fresh new blood in. And I guess that's one reason interns are so great, because you can kind of get that boost of short-term experience and exposure.
Yep.
Because like one of the things, not talking about interns, but talking about new blood, I teach a class at JBU.
Yep.
And I've basically created a space for my students to experiment and try to figure things out for their own and using Fusion. And they challenge a lot of my preconceived ideas for how to program parts. Okay. And they use features that I don't normally use And then I'll go over there and be like, well, you could use this feature. And I'm like, wait, stop. Let's see if they're onto something. And I've definitely learned some things from some of these students where I'm like, I wouldn't do it that way normally because I don't really use that very often, but that actually works out really well in that situation. And so I'm learning probably just as much from them as they are from me. And a lot of it's just because there's 8 of them and they're all doing their own thing, because and this is one thing I try to drive into them. I said, if there's one thing you can learn, it's not that there's a right way or a wrong way. There's just better and worse ways. And you have to make trade-offs constantly. And so, if you're trying to go super fast, you might want to do this, or if you're trying to get a really good finish, you might want to do that. And if your work holding's too weak, you need to do this. And so, they looked at me and they go, well, what's the answer? How do I do this? And I'm like, you can't just do it one way. Like, everything's different every time. So you need to be flexible. That's the whole point.
Yep. It's like the quote, engineering is the art of compromise.
Yeah. That sums it up very well.
Well, on that note, did you have anything else?
Let's see here. Was there anything else? We have become gun dealers for a couple different businesses. And so that's exciting. So I'm not sure if we're going to become a storefront like a traditional gun shop, but I'd like to have a couple more guns around that I can just sell people. And then I'd like to do some themed guns, which I think I've talked about before. So we have started doing that. And we have started lowering our prices on Etsy.
Okay.
For some of our different items, and sales are starting to pick up considerably. And so our profit margin has gone down, but our volume is going up. And so in the end, I think we're going to end up making more money. It's just going to be moving more product, which is a good thing in the long run, I think.
Though caution, Etsy sales right now skyrocket for this next 2 months or so. So don't make sure you have correlation and causation figured out here.
True.
Because you might just be lowering your prices and maybe would have made the same amount of money anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of need to see if I can become a distributor for these people. Comelon. In my head, I call him Cucamelon, but because I have children. Because this is the most expensive ingredient of the tape measures I'm making.
Are you buying full tape measures and then breaking them apart?
Yes.
Yeah. If you can get to do you think you could ever get the internals on their own, or no?
I'm sure that I could buy them from China. Yes.
Yeah, but you want to buy them from that brand and just take them apart.
Yeah, at least for the current ones. The guy that I'm doing the white label for, he has specifically requested the guts from this specific tape measure. And to be fair, they are nicer. It's a different tape pattern that's a little bit easier to read, and I like it better as well. These ones I can find for cheaper. So these are the ones that he wants. These are the ones that I want. And basically, I just went to my local Menards and bought everything they had on their shelf of these. But these ones run about $10.
Yeah,
which adds a lot to the price. These ones are like $4.
Yeah,
and they have the exact same guts.
Oh, they do?
Yes, it's just a different tape pattern, and this one has over molding on the grip.
Oh, so the internals are the same. The only thing's different is the tape. Yeah, that would be if you could become a distributor for them, that would probably help. Because I think I mentioned this before on the podcast, because I think we did become a dealer, and I think I did mention that last week. But yes, there was a pretty substantial savings on some of them. Yeah. Not on all of them, but on some of them there was.
And this is like a traditional retail item, which means it's a 50% markup. So if they're selling them in the store for $10 and we can buy them for $5, just generally roll.
And if you could find the factory that was making those and get them, from there, you could even save more money on that.
Yes.
Have you heard of Linus Tech Tips?
Yes.
Have you watched his screwdriver videos?
Nope.
So you need to watch that. So Linus made his own screwdriver, but he has a video that goes into the manufacturing process and everything that they did to make their screwdriver. And it is, from a machining and business perspective, fascinating. It's like a 20-minute video on how to contact a brand, try to because he reaches out to a brand that has a screwdriver that's like his favorite type of screwdriver, and then says, hey, I want to take your screwdriver and I want to make it for my company, but I want to make some changes. What do I need to do to be able to use the technology that you have in your driver? Basically, make a new label out of it. And by the end of it, none of the guts in his are the same as the other brand. They tweaked everything. But it's cool listening to him go through the process of dealing with them, and then dealing with the process of going over to China to have them actually mass produced.
Yep.
And so I wish there was more videos like that out there, because I want to learn that. I want to learn how to do that, because I want to do everything, but there's so much more power in being able to push stuff off to other entities outside of yourself, just to scale your growth.
And it's so cheap to go overseas. There's headaches involved. So I can't share the details on this, but my Frog Pod buddy has been going overseas more and more. We just did a bulk order of Sharpies. He figured out that he could he had enough people that he could put together a group buy, and 35 or 40 of us all chipped in for a box of Sharpies. So it'll be in the Sharpies, they're off-brand Sharpies, but they're the same guts. So I'm getting a box of 100 Sharpies for I don't know, 20 cents a Sharpie or something like that. It'll last me forever. But anyway, he was talking to a manufacturer for another product that he is working on, and it has a part that's like a Swiss lathe part, machining both ends, like subspindle operations. and then he has a part that's either a live axis lathe part or a like 2-op mill part. And the quote on this was like $2 for these parts, $2 each. And it literally, you could not get the material for $2.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so frustrating and cool.
Yes. I should probably do that for these tape measures after these first couple batches.
Yeah,
assuming that they sell well.
And that's the problem I have with that is it's so much cheaper to do that, and there's so much more money to be made. But I like doing so much of it myself, and I really like doing it in America. I got that America spirit where I want to do as much of it as I can here. But it's so tempting and profitable to just outsource it to China.
Yeah, I would much rather keep in the U.S. if I could. And honestly, like something like this, that might be possible. Maybe not quite as high of a margin, but like it's doable, I would think. Even through something like Xometry, though that'd be expensive.
Yeah, it would.
I don't know. It's something that I will look into.
Fair enough.
But if I, in my perfect world, I would be designing, prototyping products, and then sending that off to somebody else who is then doing the production and the sales. Like that's what I want to do. I just want to make cool things, and then let someone else deal with everything else from there on.
Fair enough.
And that could be all outsourced through China, or that could be, you have a guy, like I hire a machinist who stands in front of the machine and does production.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a longer term goal.
Yep. That's how it goes. So, well,
all right. You want to take us out?
Sure. So for those of you who've been listening and watching, we appreciate you hanging on for this week's talk. I'm Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, here with AJ from Design the Everything, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.